Hi everyone. We're filming this here at a lovely evening here at the House of Aligned, and I wanted to kick this session with really one of the things we're all feeling, right, as sellers right now is selling is getting so complex, right? And there are stats around this all over the place. I think the recent ones that I've seen is around 30% or 40% right now, 35% even of sellers are hitting targets, okay, in the last few quarters. So we're all feeling the same thing. We're all seeing that we're just having way more stakeholders involved in our deals. We're having way more budget scrutiny right now. We're having much longer sales cycles, and essentially we're all just trying to do better, right? And what I want us all to really think about today for a second is, what if we're looking at it the wrong way, from the wrong, not from the right perspective? If we look at it for a second, is selling is so complex because buying has gotten so complex, right? So if you think about this for a second, is all of that budget scrutiny, all of that number of stakeholders are involved are challenges that our buyers need to face right now, and they need to go through, right? A champion needs to go and build that business case and get a decision across, needs to go and fight that political issues and build consensus. So I think in the recent years, buying has gotten more and more complex. You have, and which means that if you as a buyer, you're not getting the right experience, then why would you work with a seller, right? So why would you even spend more than the minimum amount of time with a seller and not using that seller more than using that seller just for giving you information? So really, that's what we're seeing a lot in Align when we were diving into this research, and that's what kind of led us to really build the company. And what I'm very excited about this conversation is the concept of buyer enablement. So Gartner is talking about, okay, so we have all of that complexity, and what we're seeing is really that the buyer is shifting away a lot from the seller, and we live in a buyer-led era where right now 95%, which is crazy, 95% of buying actually happens when you're not there as a seller in the room to affect it and to do anything about it, which means that you're no longer here to just try to pitch to someone and close a deal. Your focus really should be about building a very good experience, really crafting a buying journey so that the buyer will want to spend more time with you, one. And secondly, would be to enable the buyer to sell for you while you're not there in the room. So, long story short, this is the concept. Really, it's a transition from selling, pitching, focusing on the call, to really crafting a very good experience and journey, and to enabling champion to sell for you when you're not there. And for this session, really, we wanted to go and dive into that buyer perspective more. So we have a lot of great folks over here that have done a lot of selling and buying, and we're going to dive into these perspectives and basically help us all understand what on the other side looks. So with that, I'm going to move it to Hamish to kick things off.
So you said something interesting there about rep view. Quota attainment.
Yeah.
It's about 34%. That was the most recent.
That's all I gotta say, yikes.
Yikes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about the most recent number that I saw.
Yeah.
It changes every week, but let's say it's 34. In all my trainings, I say it's flat 50 because I think I like to round up and down. So tell me this. Why do you think that's the case? Do you think that's an issue with buyer enablement, or do you think that's an issue with the economic climate we've got right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's starting with, of course, the economic climate that's making things, of course, that's adding to the challenge. The buyer enablement is the solution, right? We've just gotten all of these different things that are happening. So the economic climate is making that more stakeholder situation worse. Basically, CEOs saying, okay, CFO, you have to be right now involved in everything.
Yep.
Or I want to understand every spend above a lower threshold. So, that's just creating more scrutiny. That's just creating more hesitance and more surprises and more things in the sales process, making it harder. So that means right now they just need to execute much better, and you need to execute on that buyer enablement. Buyer enablement is essentially a solution to execute your deals better, right? That's the goal.
So would you say on that point, like you mentioned, people are like the numbers, the budget's under scrutiny, and because of the climate, that's obviously a thing. Like you have a CFO coming down on you hard, or if
Investors.
you're a solopreneur, you've got your wife coming down on you hard.
Why, you speaking from experience?
I
or what?
definitely am speaking from experience. My wife is my CFO, and I love it. I don't have to handle the finances. Fantastic. So obviously, there comes a lot of things come into play.
Yeah.
And do you not think that number at 34% is directly related to the economy right now, because it directly relates to people making decisions based on security?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely.
And the follow-up point,
Yeah.
which I wanted to ask, or as a question, could be rhetorical, is don't you think the reason that people, the Gartner study you mentioned a couple of times now, it's what 78% of people prefer to buy on their own rather than through a sales rep. Don't you think that's because they're looking at, they trust no one other than themselves?
Yeah.
But they're going to their peers.
Exactly.
Like this.
And as Alexis mentioned, I don't want to take your line, but as you mentioned like 10 minutes ago when we were speaking about this one-on-one, you mentioned that when it's with engineers, it's like they might not voice a lot of the things in person, but they'll go to Reddit and go through like Reddit threads. And that means just avoid the salesperson, it seems, in this climate, because people trust themselves to make the decision on their own rather than having to get sold to.
Well, and it's very dependent on the type of buyer that you're working with, right? So we live in this like age of information and technology where you can type anything into Google and come up with an answer in 5 minutes, and just because you did the research doesn't mean you came to the correct conclusion, right? I could do all the research in the world and not understand it properly, or have the wrong requirements, or not really understand where the industry is going, which is where I think sales reps can add more value, because you're not only giving them the information, but you're giving meaning to it, right? The why behind it. And that's where reps can add more value than the data sheet, right?
Yep.
I mean, anyone can go online and get a virtual demo or read the data sheet. And as a rep, it's your job, in my opinion, as a rep, as an engineer, as a sales engineer, to give meaning behind that. And really show them or lead them what it means for their business.
100%, and I think, and someone else, please add to this, but I definitely do think that number directly relates to the world we're currently living in. I think that number is going to go up exponentially, like in the 3 to 5 years to come, when we combine buyer enablement and sales enablement. Because at the moment, you've got a lot of reps, not necessarily specialists, and I've talked about this
Enablement
so
is
much.
so
I know,
important.
I know.
People enablement, tool enablement, all of it. It's so important.
I talk about this so much.
I know.
But it's
not there.
I guarantee the reps, those 34% that hitting quota, are all massive specialists in their exact dead set area. And they know the market. They know how their buyer wants to get spoken to.
They know their enterprise, the S&P, they know who they're selling to, and they know if it's a CMO, it's a CRO, they know exactly what problems they need to be solving, and they go straight to that. They don't go through the whole entire, here's every little thing that we solve for. No, they don't need to know what a CMO is trying to solve for. The CRO has this specific problem, we're going straight to that. People want people just to understand them. Like, I want this, boom, done.
So I have an interesting question, right? We've all been on the selling side. We've all been on the buyer side. Maria, I know you were saying you've managed a 60-person sales team at one point. In your mind, as like a sales enablement leader, how did you go about that buying process? What did that look like to you in like maybe 1 to 2 sentences?
Yeah, so I think to your point, it's like we have to enable these reps in a way that they can create that type of experience for the buyer, right? Because what we do right now as enablement leaders, as sales leaders, a lot of times from my experience I've seen, at least, is we drill them with product. Tell them about the bits and bytes and features and our pitches and our logo slide of all of our great customers, right? But it's all about us. And they
That's
can
a great
find
thing
that.
to say. It's all about us. So it's so true. Like,
And they can find all that information out on the website, right? So like they don't need you to find to give them information. They need you to curate the information, what's relevant to them specifically, and that's the skill that we need to teach them. And that's actually what brought me into the buying process, because I'm like, how do I create this environment where the reps can do this well and can deliver for their buyers, become prepared for those conversations? Because the way that we're enabling reps right now,
reps aren't being enabled. In my opinion, there's no enablement
they're not.
happening. I am very passionate about this too.
I'm a sales trainer. I enable all the reps I train.
You are doing amazing. Listen, you are.
It exists. It's just
I
not common.
am trying to. When I get a terrible email, I've got a folder specifically bad emails, and I will send it back to them. I will redo it because I'm like, you don't know what you don't know, and if I can just help you in some way, shape, form, because this is a terrible email, you have no clue. I'll just rewrite it and send it back. I'll also figure out who their manager is on LinkedIn real quick so see them. And then it's an easy sell right there too, even though I'm an evangelist, but I'm between kind of liaison between sales and marketing. So it's also just kind of helping them. They see that there's a better way to do things. Then let's just go ahead and streamline this. Let's get the person who needs to see us the champion, who would probably be the sales manager. Let's have a little fun with it and be like, hey, check this out. Do you like this one or this one better? And then it's, you just have a little more fun with it. So be human with your approach with enabling too.
Tell me this.
What? Nervous?
No. Evangelism. Now, do you think evangelism is helping the whole buyer process, or do you think it's hurting it?
It could absolutely go either way, 100%. It depends on who it is.
Yep. Good evangelism?
Evangelism is very deep and wide and broad, and there's you can't box it in.
Yep.
Because there's so many different factors that it can be, because it is between sales and marketing. So there's deals that I've closed recently. I'm not on the sales team. I'm under marketing. But it was because they came to me directly because I was more influenced. They just came because I posted something or shared something in some community, and there was trust built between this person. They came directly to me, and then I closed it by accident, kind of thing. And then I said, how do I send a Panda doc out? And they're like, what are you doing? But then on the marketing side, it's where I'm also trying to go and be out there where the buyers live and understand where the market's going, what people are talking about, where they're talking to their peers. And then, because that's how buyers are buying, with the people that they know and they trust. So if evangelism, if you want to be a really good evangelist, be a walking, talking bridge to the solution, and literally hold the hand of this person, and then join that first demo, and have enough knowledge. You don't need all the knowledge in the world, this product knowledge, right? You just need enough to know exactly. It's the EQ, honest to God. I think it's more EQ than IQ. But IQ, it's the street smart, but then knowing when to add that product knowledge as well.
You can train EQ, you can't train IQ.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting bridge, and the first time I heard the word evangelism,
Standing outside,
was
right?
about 3 weeks ago. I didn't.
Really?
No, I swear
It's
to God,
probably when you and we joined coming here.
it was a girl I met from AWS, and she was a developer advocate at AWS, and she was explaining to me the world of being a technology evangelist, and I had never heard the term. And a discussion I've been having recently is about the parallels between technology evangelism and traditional influencing. So when you look at influencer marketing for Chanel, Louis Vuitton, the makeup companies, any sort of fitness apparel, it's influencer marketing is something that everyone's very, very familiar with, because you have these influencers who built their personal brands over TikTok, over Instagram, over Twitter, and obviously they influence consumer products. But my argument to that is that as a sales rep, right, or sales engineer, whatever, your account team to your customer is meant to be the trusted advisor, right? If your customer has a problem, it's something that's been beaten in my brain, you are meant to be their trusted advisor, their go-to for that issue. And my argument is that these influencers in fitness, cooking, health and wellness, whatever it is, you know, if I want a recipe, I'm going to my favorite cooking influencer. She is my trusted advisor in her niche, right? Same thing for these girls I follow that work out or do DIY, right? Or home decor, right? They are my trusted advisor, so there's no reason that B2B brands can't build that same persona online for their companies, where you almost have, you know, as you were saying, an evangelist, a face that their customers are able to more easily connect with and follow the journey and see their success story as they go through, as they go through life.
No, I would add to that, you've got to be a part of the conversations, though, because then when you join the conversation, say you're in a Slack community, right, and someone asks a question, even if it's something you don't solve for, tag someone that you know who is that product expert, and then you're connecting, and then they remember you because you simply help them.
And because you're talking about the solution
And
not about the product. Because if you're constantly, like, being a true evangelist, and like the title's Chief Evangelist Officer, and like, or it's now like Head of Community even. Like,
there's so many new titles coming out. It's like, what do you do?
Sure, but they all kind of mean.
It's all basically the same.
Yeah, it's going the same direction of being a voice to the solution that a company solves. But if they talk about the product too much, then people are just going to be like, well, you're just marketing, like shamelessly marketing the product like LinkedIn used to be. But if you're constantly and consistently talking about, for example, like with Align, if like we're consistently talking about like fixing like the demo room, like getting everyone in the demo room together, like fixing like the MAP, like constantly, then people are going to associate Aligned with fixing that. Now, that, like, there are companies out there that have done it really, really, truly well, and they've built their whole presence, everything off their LinkedIn brand. But funnily enough, it's usually one person who's done that. All it takes is for that person to leave, and then the brand disappears.
We've seen it. Yeah.
Many times. Many times.
What's stopping reps from becoming evangelists, from evangelizing?
Nothing.
And I think like for a company like Align, like evangelizing the problem, right? And not even necessarily the solution. If you're, working in a large, well-funded type of company where like the problem is like super mature and everyone knows about it, then like yes, maybe the solution. But I have a clear of like you should be evangelizing the problem, and because most of the target market like might not even realize that there is a problem. So like reps should get very, very clear on what that problem is.
I have a very like straightforward thing that I believe about this is that if you don't, and this goes into like everyone personally, if you don't have a why as to what you're trying to do, like you don't have your why in life, and you don't have a passion for what you're doing, and you don't want to understand further, if you don't want to seek that knowledge, you just want to make that, whatever amount of money for that, deal, and you just want to close or all that. If you don't have that specific, like, genuine curiosity too, that you want to understand people, you're not going, or think outside the box and jump into marketing calls that you weren't invited to, like I used to, because I just wanted to understand why marketing was not doing what I felt as though, like, Vidyard did something really great one time, and I jumped into a marketing meeting, and I was like, hey, have you guys seen this? But it was because I had a why to keep a roof over my two little girls and our head. I was like, that is why I have to go. I want to understand the lay of the land of this company and understand why people are doing what they're doing. How can we reach people better? There's so many boxes everybody's trying to be like. These companies are putting people in boxes. I challenge anybody, go get out of your box. Like, you're not boxed in. If you're boxed in, go somewhere else. Like, there's a lot of places that are hiring as much as there's places that are laying people off. Like, you got to know your why.
I kind of disagree.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think that you should be boxed in. And I'm not saying boxed into a company. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
I'm not talking. I just made a noise. I didn't say a word.
Boxed in?
I'm interpreting it in a way, but Amelia's going to correct me in a second.
I will.
Because I know her very well.
I will.
But the way I interpret it is boxed in like you shouldn't be boxed in your lane, but I feel like your lane is valuable. Like, for example,
Yes.
and I think that people, bring it back to specialism, I think people should specialize and then stay in that box because they become way more valuable. Your personal brand is that box.
I don't.
And yeah, if you do.
Oh, we're going in a disagreement circle. Here we go.
But I'm saying, like, of course, like, jump, like, go to as many companies as you want. Go work 4 months here, 6 months here, 10 months here. That's all I'm saying.
Or
like,
cross-train
Well,
within.
it gives you more oversight into the value you can provide for your customers when you have more experience. So I personally cover 6 different verticals across 70 different solutions, and I'm not a specialist in anything, but I can make suggestions broadly.
I'd argue that
You're
you're a specialist in a lot of things.
Well,
We've heard it
You know the
today.
right questions to ask and the right way to
But there's-
talk to people.
the more experience you get, the more parallels you could draw, even across
Exactly.
different industries. I mean, even though, like, again, I sell to mostly engineers, you guys sell to other salespeople. There's things that you say that
Oh my
it's
gosh.
the same thing.
Expertise creates efficiency. So I'm going to agree with Hamish here in that the more specialized you are, the more efficient you are, which then gets that metric to only the 34% of reps are hitting quota, right? So if you're an expert in this one specific thing, you know damn well you don't have to ever worry about quota, and that creates efficiency in the sale, which in turn leads to the buyer-centric model, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more you're an expert, the more you're efficient, the faster the deal gets closed because you know exactly what they're looking for.
You know what to do. You know the next best step. And it's. I agree with y'all on that. I do. And I don't mean boxed in as in the sense of don't stay in your lane. Like, if you're a rep, stay in your rep lane, but it's okay to go around this car that's going slower, aka one step, that, like, you realize this EQ, I can do something a little bit better because I can reach this person in this community where I know that's where they're the most active, or they're the most active within this Reddit thread. Who knows? Whatever, because it could be a different kind of article, whatever it may be, but you're going in an unorthodox way about doing some things, but you're still, numbers don't lie. So, like, if you're still hitting your quota and your the targets that you're supposed to hit, present that, and then it's not getting out of your lane. You're still doing your job. It might just not be the orthodox way of doing it.
I mean, so I think it's all about, again, I think it's about the ICP you sell to.
Depends on the person too.
Sure, of course. And I think in, like, completely agreeing with your perspective, I think in engineering, I do agree. I think in engineering it's slightly different because, like, working like multitude of different products because you're literally creating something. All of us, we're creating shit. Like, we're salespeople, like, we're creating content, but hey,
We're the
not
content
creating
house.
much else.
Well, right, but if you worked with a bunch of different industries, right, and you were able to draw parallels between all of these different buyers, wouldn't you argue it would make you more efficient?
Why would anyone listen to me though? Like for example, like, if I'm like an enterprise sales rep and I'm talking to enterprise customers in a specific industry, if I've been doing that industry for 10 years and then I decide to do something completely different, like,
'Cause you're
what
thinking outside the
value?
box.
Like, yeah, but what,
Because it's
what value am I going to personally bring the new industry when, like, we're looking at like 6-12 month sales process and knowing the ins and outs of how those companies work, the ins and outs of how that industry makes buying decisions, the ins and outs of how legal and procurement works. Like, that's a massive thing to
I
learn.
think the difference with, if I can help with this one, with Cisco specifically, right? So many solutions, then you are a specialist
But
at, just hold on just a sec. So the way I see it, I think you're specializing in identifying the initial phase of, okay, these are the areas of that you could go into in order to solve your problem, and then you're bringing specific, more niche specialists, right?
We hire.
So your specialism is in understanding the initial challenges, what kind of directions you can take, and then bringing in other people to understand correctly the way that you sell, right?
They've brought in reps from med device sales,
Yeah.
which is completely different than IT.
Yeah.
Totally, completely different industry, and they're just as successful.
Okay.
It's just, knowing people, being able to ask different questions, think through processes differently, because not every business is the same.
I think it goes
A lot
into
of
the
it is
curiosity.
lingo too. I mean, like
Yeah.
you think about just like shifting between like financial services and like what they call like a credit union. Let's say they call them members,
Yeah.
right? But just like using the words of your
The acumen that's correct.
like,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of simple things. Like we have like a lingo library. So if like I'm preparing for a call with a different industry that I'm like, super familiar with, I might just like refresh my
Look
memory
at
of like
the
what
acronyms.
they like. How does this type of business make money? Who do they serve? Any like special words that I should know about, like how they describe their business? And I think that can go a long way. Like it's kind of like a hack it doesn't replace like years of experience, but it can get you up to speed relatively quickly.
I'm not saying it's not possible.
You are.
I'm
just
not.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Definitely not.
I just wanted to disagree with
Stop
you
it.
just because you
Stop
disagree with
it.
me. I'm just trying to do the disagreement too.
You disagree with me. I'm not saying it's not possible because I think any good worker in any profession
Can excel.
can excel with the right amount of IQ, EQ, and just skill set combination.
It goes into people first approach. It really does. I mean, it's people and it's understanding who you're talking to and actually wanting to solve their problem. Like you have to have that understanding and even a cheat sheet, like going into what you're saying, of questions to go and ask that when you don't know what to say and having it geared towards a specific, like the CMO, CRO kind of thing. These are the challenges that they are having. Based off of what the market's saying, what the industry's doing, all of that. But then you have to, it's like if you don't know what to say, just go to your cheat sheet. Like have a specific set of questions.
And it's just one last thing on that, and then I'll shut up about this comment.
Good.
This point.
Just kidding, I'm kidding.
You're so mean.
I'm big, I know.
It shows that in the buying experience too. After.
Again, it's not impossible for anyone to go into an enterprise role and kill it. But just look at the numbers. As Jack just said, 34%. Like that is completely and intimately related to people not being very good at closing deals. Like that's what that number is. And that also comes to play because people are making way more decisions in the buying process. And don't you think that you are more valuable as a candidate to jobs, to other sales roles in the same industry you've always sold to because you understand so that when you do get into that buying process, so when you're selling to that, 66% of the market that isn't buying from the other reps because those other reps don't understand them, they will talk to you because you're educating them, because you're giving them something that they didn't already know, and in turn they see you as a valued asset. And it's like I'm a sales trainer. Like I feel like I could teach sales to anyone with enough time, but as a sales recruiter as well, I can tell you from the market, those talent decisions are also directly interrelated to people's experience right now. Like there's still a lot of good talent on market and they don't have jobs.
Don't be a jack of all trades.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't be a jack of all trades.
So
No, I agree with
one
that.
element of it. So I think
Yep.
that's like
Can't
time
do it
to
all and
value,
be an
right?
expert.
Time to value. You don't have a ton of enablement resources. You don't have the maybe leadership or the documentation of like what good
Yes.
sounds like or looks like, or a lingo library and those types of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like that candidate's going to be way more valuable. In addition, though, if I'm enterprise, I'm not me, but let's pretend I'm like a super experienced enterprise seller, right? I'm coming from a different industry and I'm competing against a mid-market rep, let's say, who has never sold 6+ figure deals that with 15+ buyers, like as part of the, like that person might do better just with the enterprise experience versus the industry experience because they know how enterprise B2B companies buy. Because there's lots of complexities there, right? Because I think Sarah mentioned this earlier, there's like two different sales processes, or two different pieces of it. It's like, okay, let's sell them on the problems and like help them come to the right decision and like be that guy, that trusted advisor to your point. But then it's also like, how do we get, like, you're the champion for this is going to make this big impact for you. How do you sell this in this 15+ person group that are stakeholders in this, because we know that that's what it looks like now.
Yeah.
And to relate it all the way back to the original topic of buyer enablement, it's
Let's loop all that back in.
bring it all together. I mean, you just said it. Like, you've got, say, like what Sarah said is you've got people running the whole process, like they're making 100% of their quota and everything like that. It's the sales skills are no longer enough. Just because you're a massively awesome salesperson and you can sell ice to Eskimos and all of that. It's honestly, it's just not enough anymore. When you're sitting in front of those buyers, like, you have to be giving them something other than what they already know. And if for a second they think that they have to sit through like 6-7 different demos to get to the end of it, then like,
All they want is
So
pricing.
it all goes back to they can get so much information on their own, so much research done on their own, right? And they're all gotten so used to self-serving and doing a lot of their own. So if you're not really doing something new and your skills, so when you're saying, this is also a sales skill, right? To teach something new, that's a sales skill of its own. But if we look at the kind of conventional way of how you look at selling, which is getting better at the pitch, getting better at running the meeting, and getting better at all of these things. So, you can get better in all of these areas, but and still fail. Yeah, and still fail. So
That's the IQ though, like the whole let's learn.
yeah,
EQ, let's learn the person that I'm talking to.
Exactly.
That's the big piece
Exactly.
that I think is missing.
so the more you do that, the more right now you can understand them and bring that EQ.
Yep.
The more you can teach, the more you can build value, the more you can
Trust.
build a champion that can go and do that selling for you when you're not there. Then that's where you win and stand out.
I loved this. Cut.